What's up, y'all? One Piece One Life here, and one thing that I really like about the One Piece story is how everyone has different opinions on what they do and don't like about the story. That difference is what fosters community that allows us to come together and just talk about the epic that we love. Wano Country has been done as an arc in the manga for over a year now, but now that it's officially wrapping up in the anime too, I think now's the perfect time for me to tell y'all what my favorite things about Wano Country is. So yeah, pretty simple concept, but this video is going to be the best things about Wano Country. But before we start, guys, please like the video, subscribe to the page, and share it around with all your friends who love One Piece. So this video is going to be in no particular order. It's just going to be the way that I noted things that I like, and we're going to start off with the Toby Roppo. Now, a trope that I personally love in anime and manga, and just honestly series in general, is when you have antagonist groups that don't just defer immediately to the leader, but antagonist groups that have different relationships with each other within that group. I mean, that's why I love the Akatsuki from Naruto or the Phantom Troop from Hunter x Hunter so much. So then you have the Beast Pirates in One Piece. The Toby Roppo are the 5th through 11th strongest members on the crew, and you can really see the infighting and the different interpersonal relationships that they all have with each other. I mean, you have Ulti and Page One, who are siblings, but they squabble all the time. Black Maria is sadistic and loves it when Ulti fights everybody else. Who's Who has his own motivations to take out one of their higher-ups, Queen, and take his place. Drake, meanwhile, is secretly undercover in this whole thing. He's undercover as a sword spy for the Marines. And Sasaki loves to drink, but even then, just seeing them all interact with each other when we were first introduced to them, and then seeing how those interactions go on to play out throughout the rest of the Onigashima raid, up till seeing them beaten by the Alliance, all of that was really a highlight of the arc for me, even if some of them were done very wrong in their fights. But you know a fight that wasn't done wrong? Roof Piece. Now, when Roof Piece chapters were coming out, like in the manga, I honestly thought that I was experiencing peak fiction. So for those who somehow forgot or just aren't tapped into the online fan base like that, Roof Piece is the fan term given to the battle between Big Mom and Kaido and Luffy, Law, Kid, Zoro, and Killer. And what a fight it was. Seeing the characters that we had been basically growing up with, we had been journeying with for such a long time throughout the New World. They've gone through different struggles in the New World. Finally go up against the most powerful force on the seas and not immediately get wiped out and give them a good fight. It was just so amazing to see. And then let's not forget that Roof Piece had some amazing sequences. The way Luffy walked right between Big Mom and Kaido and completely ignored them. Gum Gum Red Rock. The return of Zoro's Ashura mode. Even seeing Big Mom's true power, which we didn't see in Whole Cake Island because she was screaming wedding cake 70% of the time. And then Kaido's ultimate form with the hybrid form. We were just feasting. It was really a feast. And I'm so happy to have partook that word in it. Next thing I loved, a character who is personally one of my top 3 favorite characters in the whole show, and somebody who I believe is the true MVP of the Onigashima raid, Marco the Phoenix. Let's recap everything that Marco did in that war. He was out there healing people and helping Chopper fight the Ice Oni virus made by Queen. He flew Zoro up to the roof for Roof Piece to happen. Countered Big Mom, and I know people are gonna be like,
was that a full counter?
He essentially countered Big Mom. Manhandled King and Queen simultaneously, the Yonko 1st and 2nd commanders of that entire crew. Even the way that through his memories we learn a bit more about the Lunarians, because Whitebeard used to talk about it with him, as well as like seeing all the connections he has to Wano itself because of Ace, Whitebeard, Izo, Odin. Nah, I'm just really proud of my boy. I really love seeing him in action, and even though he's retiring now, it's a well-deserved retirement. Speaking of the Whitebeard Pirates though, another thing I really loved is seeing how they, and in particular Ace, had such strong connections to Wano. Now Oda really had no reason. He really didn't have to put Ace's, or at least part of Ace's story in Wano, but he did. And I think that it was for the better, because that literally laid the foundation for Kaido's defeat. Ace has so many connections to people who fought in the war that he may as well have been there himself fighting. especially because his will is carried on by his friends and of course his brother. That's like one of the overall thematic messagings of One Piece, the inherited will. I mean, he met and befriended Yamato, which got her excited at the prospect of meeting and eventually fighting with Luffy, which set the stage for Yamato actually like joining the Alliance's side in current day Wano. He and Tama shared a special connection that came full circle with Luffy, especially showing Luffy's growth from the time skip where he was like really distraught about his brother. The way that we see his reaction to it now, to Ace's death, and just like accepting it, but doing so in a way that's like not attacking or like disrespectful. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but yeah, he came to terms with his brother's death, and Tama was the mechanism to do that. But not only that, because Ace had a connection to Tama, Luffy now cares more about Tama, and it makes the whole, like, Tama, by the time we leave here, you're gonna have enough to eat. It makes that more impactful, because that was Ace's promise too. And even when Marco and Izo were recalling like their time out with the Whitebeard pirates during the war, and we saw that Ace had wanted to march straight in and just take Kaido out, and Whitebeard was the one who was like, nah, we could probably win, honestly, but a war between two emperors is gonna cause massive casualties to both sides, and more particularly the land of Wano itself, which is why they didn't go. But even then, seeing that Ace was ready to go fight, Marco and Izo were like, if you ever do get that green light, we're going with you. So yeah, I think tying Ace into the whole Wano plotline and then making him know so many Wano characters and have so many connections to so many Wano characters, it was actually a genius move on Oda's part. Real quick, this is gonna be like a kind of like honorable mention thing that I liked, because it was like, okay, but I did quite like Yamato's character, at least in terms of her joining the Alliance as a fighter, and then her Devil Fruit ability was interesting. The fact that she has Conqueror's coding is interesting, and then yeah, that part of her character appealed to me. The next thing I loved, Oden's backstory. Alright, now everyone knew that this had to be on there because it's one of the best backstories that we've ever gotten. Seeing how truly epic like Oden's life was, and how Oden himself, he's like literally one of these like epic figures, right, where everything he's doing is like an amazing feat, and the whole time he's just vying for freedom and exploration. That's all he wants. I mean, I made a video just last week about how I believe that Oden's part of the D clan, and his actions and his backstory really show it. But then during that flashback, that's the great thing about Oda flashbacks. He uses like these longer flashbacks. They're focused on one character, but they show other characters that we have, as a fan base, have been waiting to see, and just gives us those moments of hype. Because during that flashback, we see a younger version of the Whitebeard pirates, a younger version of the Roger pirates, Roger and Whitebeard clashing, and then even the iconic "he laughed," their reaction to actually finding the One Piece. We don't obviously know what the One Piece is, but just the fact that he was with Roger, they all laughed because something was just that funny. And then the Hour of Legend, he was literally carrying all 9 of his vassals on his back in boiling oil for an hour. Nah, Oda was in his bag when he was doing that backstory, I can't lie. And something else I actually really liked was the interludes between the acts. Right, so we would be in Wano country, like we'd just be hearing the Wano story for so long that we forget that this world isn't stagnant, and it's one of Oda's best features, the world building. The world isn't stagnant, so things are happening concurrently to the Wano plotline. So those interludes are the mechanisms through which we got to see all the hype things that are going on in the outside world. I mean, we got the Blackbeard stuff, right? So we saw Blackbeard's post-time skip design. We saw the fact that Absalom is dead and Shiryu now has his fruit. You see Moria going to Hachinosu, and we don't even really know, well, we now know because of the Egghead arc, but at that time we didn't know what his fate was going to be. Was he going to die, or was he going to join Blackbeard's crew? Was Blackbeard going to steal his fruit? And the second one was even more amazing, because you got the warlord system's abolishment, the murder of King Cobra, and the disappearance of Vivi, which is again setting up for things that we'd see in Egghead, and the bounties of all of the world's greatest pirates, including the Pirate King himself, so that we actually know where the ceiling in terms of bounty is. Luffy finally has a goal. It allowed us to finally have a concrete answer as to where Luffy needs to get to in terms of infamy. The next thing I loved, Gear 5. Everything having to do with Luffy's fruit, how it was reclassified, and how its new powers and lore were told to us, I believe was just simply spectacular. I mean, the condition that he seemingly literally had to die to activate it, still don't really know what's going on with that. Then the abilities itself, where he still fights with rubber, kind of, because rubber is kind of a free form thing, which is, that's whole Luffy's whole thing is just free form fighting. But the fact that what he can do is literally only limited by his imagination and how he can fight what he wants, how he wants, it's amazing. And I personally love it because it's such a different take on classical shonen power-ups, right? Because classic shonen MC power-ups are just like, along with the new form, like design-wise, you get a relative like stat boost and then like maybe one or two new powers with the said form, right? So if you think of Naruto's Sage of Six Paths mode or Ichigo's Bankai or whatever, right? All of those are stat boosts and then like maybe one or two new things. But here it's not so much a boost in strength as it is a like broader range of how Luffy can fight, and it allows him to basically be limitless in the application of the strength that he already has. The main like power boosts were through advanced conquerors and advanced armament, but Gear 5 in itself is more lateral in like the upgrades that it gave him, if that makes sense. So yeah, that was a lot more creative and a lot more unique. I think unique is really the right word. I mean, I know people are always gonna be arguing,
oh, was Gear 5 more iconic than Dragon Ball?
No, it's not, because Dragon Ball being iconic is literally what Dragon Ball is. Dragon Ball is the template for everything. But what we can say is that Gear 5 is definitely unique and in its own class in terms of what it signifies as a power-up. Also, because of this, we got to see the strongest pirate in the world at the time be used as cardio equipment. So to me, that's a net win. But speaking of strongest pirates in the world, that flows perfectly into the next thing that I really loved, which was the announcement of the new 4 emperors. Now with Big Mom and Kaido gone, obviously we need 2 people to replace them. And I remember when the chapters were coming out, a lot of people were talking about how the emperor system is just done for. I never subscribed to that idea because the emperor are just, it's not really a system made by people. It's just what people consider to be the 4 strongest. So as long as there's 4 strong pirates, those 4 strong pirates are going to be the emperors. And now that Big Mom and Kaido are gone, we need 2 new ones. So seeing Luffy, who was already considered kind of like the 5th emperor because of the events of Whole Cake Island, but seeing him finally like get a proper spot amongst the 4 emperors and like be getting the like acknowledgement and reverence that he's like deserves as a pirate captain, it really warmed my heart. And then seeing Buggy sneak his way into that group to where Buggy is now one of the most powerful pirates in the world. Oda's storytelling with Buggy is genius because it's constant falling up. He keeps failing, but even though he's failing, he's getting into these better and better positions. Until now, he's literally one of the strongest people in the world, ostensibly. I mean, I remember when this chapter came out and everyone was like, we know Buggy didn't get some random power up that made him on par with anybody. So he must be an emperor due to the fact that he now has some crazy strong, like actually strong subordinates working under him now, which birthed the theory that kind of ended up being true, which is that the warlords all band together in a crew and then Buggy just became the face of it. And since we're on it already, let's just talk about another thing that I love that came out of Wano, which was the introduction of the Cross Guild. So I mean, even though it wasn't all of the warlords coming together, which is what I personally thought was going to happen, still, the fact that it was Crocodile and Mihawk, which, depending on who you ask, at least Mihawk is clearly the strongest warlord. Depending on who you ask, Crocodile's place in the list may vary, but needless to say, 2 powerhouses coming together in a group, making one group, only for Buggy to be the face of it just because of how devoted his servants are. It's just hilarious. Their initiative is also genius. It's incredibly lucrative and intelligent because now that they're placing bounties on Marines, the script is flipped, meaning that the Marine, it's just, even though they're not like, okay, obviously no one's gonna bring in an admiral or bring in the fleet admiral because they're just too powerful, right? But the whole point is just to inhibit the Marines' process, creating more chaos while their actual plan, like, is worked on in the background. So I think that, and as far as we know, it's been happening, it's been working very well. And then I really just love the dynamic of, like, even though Buggy's the leader and everyone was like, this Buggy guy, he must be incredibly dangerous. And then Luffy's just like, nah, he's not. And then we literally see Buggy, the Emperor of the Sea, crying for his life while Crocodile and Mihawk are beating him up. Nah, it's too funny. It's too funny. I cannot wait to see how Oda integrates them into the main story. Now let's focus a bit on the Straw Hats, because that was another one of my favorite things that came from Wano. The way that the Straw Hats all, mostly, got their times to shine. I mean, starting with Sanji's character development of, like, his identity crisis following the use of the raid suit, before he, like, finally comes to terms with it and understands, like, I just need to be me. I don't need to be forced into the way that my family is, the way my brothers are, just because Judge made me like this or whatever. You can still be your own person. Before then using those enhancements, he's using it in his own way, but he's still using it to create the blue fires of Ifrit Jambe and then decimating Queen. That's peak for my favorite character. I'm just saying. I mean, Zoro versus King was also, like, really great, but obviously the anime took it to a different, like, level with that. Like, I don't know what they gave their staff that day, but Toei was cooking when they made that episode, because it may be one of the highest rated animations of this year. Then also, like, Zoro, first of all, like I mentioned earlier, using the Ashura 9-sword style again for the first time since, like, I think the original Sabaody. I think this is just the first time post time skip. And then on top of that, him knowing Conqueror's haki just like Luffy, and learning Conqueror's coding to create the King of Health's 3-sword style. I mean, then you get other power-ups for the Straw Hats too, right? Nami getting Zeus, Chopper having his moment with the Chopper Phage nebulizer against Queen's Ice Oni virus, seeing best girl Nico Robin finally get a good actual drawn out fight after over 500 chapters of not seeing her fight at all, and then learning that not only can she use Fishman Karate, but she can also use Demonio Floor. Jinbei officially joining up with the Straw Hats as he always meant to, and then through his battle with Who's Who, learning actually more lore about Gear 5, or what would eventually become Gear 5. There was lesser focus on Usopp, Frankie, and Brook, but Brook just had his arc where he was the MVP of Whole Cake Island. Frankie is, in theory, supposed to have Egghead Island, and Usopp, we can assume, is going to be in Elbaf, which is why, to me, it was kind of okay that not literally every single Straw Hat got one, because we know that Oda is going to probably write something for them later on down the line. But even then, they still had their, like, slight times when they, like, stood up and did stuff, you know, like Usopp's speech to Kiku and all the samurai, where they're like, I don't understand why y'all always trying to die. Like, cling on to your life is important. Brook being an excellent support to Robin and taking out all of Black Maria's, like, small clique so that Robin can solely focus on Black Maria. And then Frankie just absolutely ramming Big Mom's face with a motorcycle has to be, like, one of the funniest things that I saw in the entire arc. Overall, Oda really gave the Straw Hats their time to shine, their due time, and it was just like Enies Lobby, which honestly just moves on to another thing that I really liked, which was the amount of callbacks to pre-time skip arcs that there are in Wano. This arc really ties back into so many of the pre-time skip arcs in so many ways. I mean, you have Enies Lobby, Alabasta, Thriller Bark, the Marineford War. It just makes you nostalgic for the days of old, you know, like pre-time skip One Piece was such an adventurous era. It was so great. And the callbacks, like, just seeing those callbacks, even though it was like in the post-time skip era, obviously things are different, things are moving, but the fact that it's not like those are isolated incidents, that's really good world building and writing. And to a lesser extent, I also really like just the dynamic of the rivalry between Luffy, Law, and Kid. Like, because it's so nonsensical and, like, so goofy that it's just, like, funny, right? Because you have Luffy and Kid, which are, like, these all intents and purposes. They're just meatheads. They're just muscle. They're strong, but not here. But they're always arguing, constantly bickering. And then you have Law, the actual intelligent tactician, trying to form plans, but always getting just dragged into the other two's nonsense. Nah, because tell me why you're fighting against two global superpowers, and one of them shoots a fireball attack at you, and your first reaction is, hey, whoever dodges first is a big chicken. Huh? Fight the fight that you're fighting, please. But finally, the last thing that I really did love about Wano, because of like just the way that it opened up for stuff for us, is the way that we really went into a deep dive and explored Haki. So like before Wano, we only had like small tastes of what advanced forms of Haki could do, right? Where like we would see that Rayleigh could do some stuff during Sabaody, but it was never really said that it was advanced Haki because we didn't even know what Haki was at that time. And then like obviously the most like prominent advanced form before Wano was when we were fighting Katakuri and he was using Future Sight. And we're like, oh, so there's advancements in Haki. That means if there's an advancement in observation, there has to be advancements in armament and conquerors too. So yeah, seeing that there's just levels to Haki, and that certain top tiers, like there's certain abilities that you know that the top tiers have to have in order to just like even combat each other, right? Because for example, advanced conquerors, now that that's introduced, we know that all of the world's top tiers are going to have that ability, because having advanced conquerors already separates you from the majority of like New World fighters. Even though the New World fighters are strong, having that ability puts you on like an upper echelon. And then we get to see like the interaction between people's Haki, right? Because you see that Luffy has Future Sight, he's still refining it, but Kaido's like so fast that even if you have Future Sight, it doesn't work. Then the fact that Kaido himself reveals him to have Future Sight, and Yamato has Conqueror's Haki as well, and then the fact that we finally see Luffy splitting the skies with another Emperor of the Sea, that's the moment that really like cemented like Luffy is at that level. No matter what people want to say about,
oh, whether Luffy 100% health now versus Kaido 100% health now, who would win?
The fact of the matter is, the fact that we're even having that conversation proves that Luffy is at least in that upper echelon of fighters. And then even at the end, when we saw Shanks do what at the time was the wildest Haki feat we've ever seen in the story, with his Wi-Fi Haki from miles off the coast of Wano, which was strong enough to scare a Marine Admiral away with his tail between his legs. But yeah, guys, that's my list. Now Wano has a lot of different like bits and aspects of it, which different people could consider their favorite moments, you know? So you guys make sure to tell me your list in the comments. Oh, and don't worry, there's a reason that this list wasn't the best and worst things about Wano, and that's because the video would be too long. So you already know that the worst things in Wano video is coming up soon. So that's the end of the video, y'all. But please, if you liked anything I had to say, even if you didn't, make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the page where we got a lot of things coming down the pipeline, and share it around with all your friends who love One Piece. Like I said, we're trying to make this a community, but I need your help to do it. So I'll talk to you guys later, and always remember, One Piece, one life.